5 things no one over 65 should ever put up with. Have you ever caught yourself letting something slide just to keep the peace? But deep down, felt like each time you did, a small part of you was being chipped away? Maybe it was letting someone speak to you in a tone they had no right to use. Maybe it was saying yes when every fiber of your being wanted to say no. Or maybe it was allowing someone else's opinion to matter more than your own. By the time you reach your late 60s, 70s, or beyond, you start to see life with a completely different set of eyes. You've raised children, navigated hardships, made sacrifices, and supported others far more than they'll ever realize. You've been the backbone, the listening ear, the helping hand, and the safety net. And now, this season of your life belongs to you. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you turn cold or selfish. It means you stop tolerating what doesn't serve your peace, your worth, or your well-being. Because you've earned something precious, the right to protect what's left of your time, your health, and your energy. And here's the truth, there are certain things that no one over 65 should ever put up with, not from strangers, not from acquaintances, and certainly not from family. Your time is too valuable. Your energy is sacred. And your life is far too important to waste on people or behaviors that quietly drain you. In this conversation, we're going to walk through 5 specific things you should never tolerate once you've reached this stage of life. The final one, number 5, is something most older adults don't even realize they've been tolerating, until it's already robbed them of years of peace. Let's begin. 1. Guilt-driven financial pressure. One of the most painful traps older adults fall into, and I've seen it happen more times than I can count, is giving away their financial security not out of generosity, but out of guilt. It often starts with family. A child needs help covering rent after a job loss. A grandchild needs college tuition. A sibling has a temporary emergency. Or someone wants to borrow money for a can't-fail business idea. And before you've even taken a breath to think it over, you've said yes. Not because you can comfortably afford it, but because you can't stand the thought of saying no and feeling like you're letting someone down. Here's the hard truth, at this stage in life, your financial stability must come first. You've worked for decades to earn what you have. Those savings are not just numbers on a bank statement, they're your peace of mind. They're the means to cover medical bills without fear. They're the ability to age with dignity, without having to rely on anyone else for basic needs. They're your safety net against the unexpected. And every time you let guilt talk you into dipping into that safety net, even just a little, you chip away at your own security. The problem is, guilt is sneaky. Sometimes people won't come right out and ask for money. Instead, they'll drop little comments like, "I don't know what I'm going to do if I can't get help." Or they'll frame it in a way that makes it sound harmless. "You've got everything you need, right?" And if you're a parent or grandparent, that instinct to rescue, to protect, to be the hero, kicks in before you've even realized it. But here's what I need you to hear, your worth is not measured by how much money you give away, especially if it's at the cost of your own well-being. Let me tell you about Carol, a 74-year-old widow I met a few years ago. Carol drained nearly half her savings helping her daughter through a divorce. She paid legal fees, covered rent, bought groceries, for over a year. She thought she was doing the right thing. She thought she was protecting her daughter and grandchildren from hardship. But when Carol's own roof needed repairs and her prescription costs skyrocketed, she realized she couldn't cover them. Her daughter, though grateful, had already moved on and built her own stability, leaving Carol stressed, scrambling, and suddenly insecure in her own home. That's not generosity. That's sacrifice without support. There's a difference between helping and enabling. Helping is measured, thoughtful, and sustainable. Enabling slowly drains you, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. And here's the most telling sign, if people start expecting your help instead of appreciating it, if they act cold, distant, or resentful when you say no, that's not love. That's entitlement. You have every right to say, "I wish I could help more, but I have to make sure I'm secure first." You can offer advice. You can offer encouragement. You can even offer small help that doesn't put your safety at risk. But if someone tries to shame you for protecting your financial security, that's their burden to carry, not yours. 2. Guilt tripping and emotional manipulation. If financial guilt is damaging, emotional guilt can be even worse, because it attacks your sense of self-worth. And sadly, it often comes from the people closest to you. Maybe you've heard lines like, "I guess you don't care about us anymore. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? We really needed you, but you're always busy now." These aren't innocent remarks. They are pressure disguised as love. By the time we're in our late 60s or 70s, we should all know this: love isn't supposed to feel like pressure. True connection is built on respect, not obligation. Yet some people, even family, will lean on guilt when they feel entitled to your time, your presence, or your compliance. The thing about guilt tripping is that it's often subtle. It doesn't demand you do something outright. It just makes you feel bad if you don't. Suddenly, you're saying yes when you want to say no. You're showing up when you're exhausted. You're giving more even though your own cup is empty. And the worst part? You start believing that you're the selfish one for even thinking about your own needs. Susan, a 72-year-old woman I met at a community center, knew this feeling all too well. Her daughter would call last minute, asking for help with errands, babysitting, or just to talk. And if Susan hesitated, even for a second, there would be a long, heavy sigh on the other end of the line. Susan told me, "She makes me feel like I'm letting her down just because I need a day to rest." One day, Susan had a moment of clarity. She had already raised her children. She had already given decades of her life to being available. She loved her family, but she was not their emergency backup plan anymore. So she began to respond differently. "I can't today, but I'd be happy to help Thursday. I need rest today. Please understand." At first, her daughter resisted. But over time, she adjusted. The relationship didn't crumble, it actually became healthier. You are not required to twist yourself into knots to prove your love. Saying no doesn't mean you care any less. It means you're honoring your emotional bandwidth, your health, and your peace. And anyone who truly loves you will never want you to suffer for their comfort. 3. Disrespect toward your time and independence. By the time you've lived 6, 7, even 8 decades on this earth, you've earned more than just a few gray hairs. You've earned the right to live your life on your own terms, to spend your time exactly as you choose. But one of the most common, and often overlooked, things older adults tolerate is having their time treated as though it's somehow less valuable than other people's. It can start small. A neighbor rings your doorbell unannounced, expecting you to drop everything to listen to their long story. A family member calls and says, "Hey, I'll be by in 10 minutes, without ever asking if you're free. Or someone assumes that because you're retired, your calendar must be completely open, and therefore there's to fill. It may not seem like a big deal the first few times. But over time, this subtle disrespect can chip away at your sense of control over your own life. When others disregard your schedule, your routines, and your energy, they send a silent, but powerful, message. My time is more important than yours. And while that might not be their conscious intention, the impact is the same. Here's the truth, your days are not filler space for someone else's plans. If you've worked hard your whole life to finally enjoy some peace, some rhythm, and some joy, why let someone else constantly disrupt it? One of the most harmful assumptions people make is that aging automatically means availability. If you're no longer working full-time and your children are grown, they assume you must be sitting around waiting for something to do. But here's what they don't understand: for many older adults, this is the very first time in decades they've been able to structure their days on their own terms. And that is a privilege worth protecting. Take George, for example. George is 78 years old and volunteers at a local food pantry twice a week. It's his joy, his commitment, and his way of giving back to the community. One day, his son called and asked, "Dad, can you skip your volunteer shift and help me move some furniture?" George's first instinct was to say yes. That old habit kicked in, the one where you put your plans aside to help without question. But this time, George paused and said, "I made a commitment, and those folks at the pantry count on me. Let's find another time." That one small moment changed the way his son saw him, not as someone whose time was endlessly flexible, but as a man whose commitments mattered. When you protect your time, you're sending a message, to yourself and to others, that your life still has structure, purpose, and value. Whether it's your morning walk, your afternoon nap, your book club, or your quiet time with a crossword puzzle, it matters. And if someone keeps interrupting it, expecting you to adjust, or making you feel guilty for setting limits, that's not kindness. That's taking advantage. You have the right to say, "I'm not available right now." No explanation needed. No guilt required. Your independence is a treasure. Your schedule deserves respect. And the more you protect it, the more others will learn to honor it. 4. People treating your time as expendable. After 65, your time becomes more valuable than ever, not because it's running out, but because it's finally yours to use exactly how you choose. But here's the problem: far too many older adults allow others to treat their time as expendable. Family members assume you're always free. Friends expect you to rearrange your day at a moment's notice. Neighbors assume you can watch their pets, collect their mail, or wait for the repairman, all because you're home anyway. And if you're not careful, you start to believe this is normal. But it's not. Confident, happy people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond understand this truth: honoring your time is one of the most powerful forms of self-respect. They don't allow people to routinely show up late without apology. They don't tolerate last-minute cancellations without consideration. And they don't feel obligated to say yes just because they technically could. Even if your calendar doesn't have corporate meetings or project deadlines, it's still filled with meaning, moments that matter to you. And when someone disrupts that rhythm without respect, it takes a toll. Arthur, 77, experienced this firsthand. His adult children would drop their kids off without notice, assuming he would be happy to watch them. Arthur loved his grandchildren dearly. But after one particularly exhausting week, he realized he hadn't had a single day to himself. He hadn't rested, read his favorite novel, or visited an old friend like he had planned. So he sat down with his family and said, "I love helping out, but I'm not a last-minute favor. My time has value too." It wasn't an easy conversation, but it changed everything. His children began calling ahead, respecting his space, and asking instead of assuming. Respecting your time doesn't mean pushing people away. It means teaching them how to treat you. You might say, "I'm available from this time to that time. I can't today, but I'd love to see you tomorrow." And you don't need to apologize for those boundaries. Because when you protect your time, you protect your energy. And when your energy is protected, you can show up with more joy, more presence, and more love, on your terms. 5. Disregard for your boundaries. Finally, perhaps the most important point of all. When people stop respecting your personal space, your preferences, or your way of living, that's not love. That's control, dressed up as concern. And sadly, it often comes from those closest to you: family, adult children, or even longtime friends. It might start with small things: moving your furniture around without asking, telling you what you should eat, insisting you switch doctors because they know better. On the surface, it might look like they're just trying to help. But underneath, it chips away at your independence. The older you get, the more people assume you can't make your own decisions. They may start treating you like a child, not out of malice, but out of habit or fear. You shouldn't be living alone. You don't need to drive anymore. Why are you still doing that? These might be wrapped in care, but the impact is suffocating. You still deserve the dignity of deciding how you live your own life. Eleanor, 78, told me her son began stopping by unannounced to go through her mail. Just making sure you didn't miss a bill, he said. Soon he was managing her appointments without asking, changing things on her calendar, and even rearranging her pantry, for efficiency. It got to the point where Eleanor felt like a guest in her own home. When she finally brought it up, he called her ungrateful. This is what happens when boundaries are ignored. Your voice gets drowned out by someone else's version of what they think is best for you. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges that keep relationships respectful. When you say no, it should mean something. When you say, I prefer it this way, that choice deserves to be honored. If you want help, you'll ask for it. But no one has the right to bulldoze your preferences just because they think they know better. It's okay to say, I appreciate your concern, but I'd like to handle this on my own. I'm happy to talk about it, but I need you to listen to what I want too. The people who truly care will respect those words. The ones who don't may get upset, but that's not your fault. Final thoughts. Getting older doesn't mean you lose your right to peace, respect, or control over your life. In fact, these years are the ones where those things matter most. Your voice still matters. Your choices still count. And the boundaries you set now will shape the quality of the years ahead. You've earned the right to say, no more tolerating people who drain my energy. No more making excuses for behavior that leaves me feeling small. No more doubting my instincts when something doesn't feel right. At this stage, you don't owe anyone blind obedience. You don't need to accept guilt disguised as love. And you certainly don't need to apologize for protecting your peace. When you stop tolerating what drains you, you create space for what restores you. That can mean deeper friendships, stronger self-respect, and days that feel lighter because you've finally put yourself first. Your life is not a rehearsal. You don't get these years back. Make sure they're spent on people and experiences that fill you, not empty you.